Belal Muhammad is going to fight Leon Edwards. We all have come to the conclusion that if Leon wins, Leon goes into a title fight. Now, the other side of that would be, well, what happens if Muhammad wins? And a lot of people haven't thought that far ahead because the odds makers say that's very unlikely to happen. I personally believe in momentum within sport, and momentum without question is on Muhammad's side. And people are looking at that going, oh, I don't think so. How do you say that? Leon hasn't lost in 8 fights in 4 years. I understand all of those things, but his last fight was still a period of time ago. His last fight was more months ago than Muhammad's fight was weeks ago. Interesting in that regard, and I think a meaningful leg up. I think there's something to fighting the pandemic. I've never had to do it myself, but I have been an observer as you in the pandemic. It feels different. It looks different just to us as the viewer. There's got to be something to walking out in these arenas that gives you an advantage having done it versus a guy who hasn't done it. And I realize we're splitting hairs here most likely, but isn't this a game of millimeters to start with? There appears to be, by the people who are betting, that this is a foregone conclusion that Leon is going to win. And I am here to remind you the Leon that you have in mind is a period removed. Not to mention walking right back into a 5-round main event. It's one of these things. It's one of these things that appears that it would need greater conversation, greater review, and above everything else, the thing that I feel that I have just achieved proving to you is we don't know. Or we don't actually know what is going to happen to Muhammad. What are you going to think of Muhammad if he goes out there and he beats Edwards? Not to mention he does it in a main event of ESPN. Not to mention he's very good. Belal Muhammad is very good on the mic. He is very good at psychology, grabbing that stick, having 40 seconds, and making sure he leaves you with a meaningful impression. I bring that to you because the guys who overthink their career and sit around and jockey, history agrees with me that they get passed up. Well, here's a bigger fight. This is the one I'm going to get. This is the better fight. And then guys will decide on their own and within their own camps. The fight I need is so-and-so, and if I beat him, I cannot be denied a championship. Man, you can be denied a championship for anything. Hey, you want a championship? Okay, I deny you it. Next. Right? There's not a lot that goes into it. And I will encourage you time and time again, take that opportunity, get that card placement in front of opponent, win that match, and use that platform. That is the key to a great and meaningful and long career. You are guaranteed a platform. You are guaranteed a larger platform with victory. Guaranteed it. Guaranteed it. Your team and your manager and your trainer and your little bubble will sit around and convince you that such and such fight will guarantee you something else. But it's never worked that way. It's never worked that way. I could offer you many examples where it worked the opposite way. Many. And until those actual matches happened, you never know. I mean, imagine if you were Sandhagen or Dillashaw or even the matchmakers planning to play Sandhagen and or Dillashaw for the winner of Aljo versus Jan. You got to hold that thought. First off, there was a bizarre ending in that match what ran it back. But let's say there wasn't a bizarre ending and Aljo just went out and beat Jan. Jan is going to have a very meaningful argument for a rematch, of which might happen. But that would also stop, in this case, I'm just using an example that's current, that would stop Dillashaw, that would stop Sandhagen from being placed in that spot. It's one of these things. And I'll never lose the example of when Daniel Cormier co-mainted against Pat Cummins. Pat Cummins, who had never been in the organization before, had absolutely no ranking. And Daniel Cormier not only fought him in a co-main event, beat him, and went right into a world title fight, which at the time was the largest drawing world title fight in light heavyweight history. It was Daniel versus John Jones. But if you were to sit around with these teams and experts and managers who make believe that they know something about the sport, they don't even, not only do they not know the sport and not have any power within the sport to make their wishes come true, they don't even study the history of the sport. History of the sport by no means says you fight this guy and then you get to go into this guy, or you defeat this guy and you get to go into this position. Amanda Nunes is the champion of the world 2 divisions over, who, by the way, fought 5 days ago, who, by the way, was not the main event. Now, that's not a knock on Amanda, but that is absolute proof, absolute, undeniable proof that it's not who you beat and it's not what you have done per what your managers and team and yourself thought. Nobody through time would think that you could be champion, be on a card, and not main event. Okay, well, what if another champion's there? Okay, great. Nobody through time would ever predict that you could be a double champion simultaneously, be on a card, and not be the main event. But it happened 5 days ago. And there was no knock and there was nothing wrong with it. But the best thing that you can do for your career in the short time that you're going to have one is to take the opportunities that you can get as quickly as you can get them in the largest placement that you can get, which in Muhammad's place and Leon's place is a main event on ESPN. Get a victory and use that platform. This is not rocket science, and I'm not presenting something to you that's new. But if you ever find you sitting around with your team strategizing, right there should be a red flag, we have a problem. Right there should be a big red flag, you have a problem. Neither you nor your team nor your managers are good enough at strategizing to have a job on the second floor at the UFC. All right, respectfully. If you guys were good enough to understand what strategies were and what was going to happen next and what should happen next, you'd have a job on the second floor at the UFC. Instead, better. You don't have to do it. Somebody else who understands that is going to call you. Even better. Appreciate that. Wait for that call to come. Know that a trained, paid professional who has looked into this, has strategized this, has access to numbers that you don't, has decided this is what's best, then say yes. Then use that opportunity, because the guys that sit out are getting passed by. I mean, I just got to tell you in all fairness, but it was just a moment ago, Belal Muhammad could never be in the same conversation as Leon. Belal Muhammad could never be, I mean, just a short cup of coffee ago, in a conversation to be the next opponent for Kamaru Usman. But he said yes. And before you think, well, yeah, guys, great opportunity for Belal Muhammad. I mean, of course, why wouldn't he say yes? He's going to go and take the ranked guy, and he's going to get a main event and maybe even take his place. Before you say that, please understand the way we started this talk 8 minutes ago, which was that if Leon wins, Leon goes and fights for the belt. So if at any point in this last lecture I gave you, you came to the conclusion that yes, perhaps Muhammad will go on to fight Kamaru, but you started this with a win by Leon means Leon gets to fight Kamaru, then I have overwhelmingly proved that it does not matter who you fight. It has never mattered who you fight. I won't say the same about placement on the card. There's very few guys that jerk the curtain, even that jerk the curtain for the main card, that then elevate into a main event and or a title fight, rather. I meant to say title fight. No matter how well you do in the opening fight of the night, you generally, historically speaking, don't then jump into a title fight. But when you go to main event, there's nowhere else to go. If you win in a main event, you get to do another main event, or you go and fight for a title. The placement of the card greatly trumps who you're going to fight. But even set that aside, just go do the damn fight. Don't be one of the guys that's forgotten. Don't be one of the guys that's calling and begging a .com to do an interview with him because he has no other platform. Don't be one of the guys that is desperately out there on his social media, a little more active than he used to be, because people are forgetting him. Don't be that guy that's sitting in his room with his team strategizing, absolutely certain that if I do this, I'm going to get that. There's a professional, in fact, there's a very small team of them on the second floor in Nevada. Put on your critical thinking hat. They're the ones that are going to make the decision, same as they always have. You go do your job. Starts with answering your phone. followed by saying yes, and then showing up and using, and don't forget this. Don't forget this, because some people don't like this. They don't like that, well, it's anybody and the rankings don't matter. They don't like that. But here's what you get. Here's what you need to like. And here's what you need to appreciate. You get a platform. You get a platform. And within the last calendar month, I've seen a guy get a world title fight by using that platform. And I saw another guy get a date with Miley Cyrus. And I don't say that for tongue-in-cheek levity or humor or comic relief. That happened. That platform is powerful. There's things that you have to do to get to it, but it's powerful. So never sit back and ask yourself or ask your team or ask the guy on the other end of the phone, what do I get? I'm going to tell you now. Here's what you get. Get a chance to compete in a sport that you claim that you love. And secondly, you get a platform.